The halls of the Galactic Council were built to inspire awe. Massive pillars of crystalline material stretched toward a ceiling that displayed the stars themselves. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated positions, each seat positioned according to their civilization's influence and power. The humans occupied the lowest tier, closest to the floor where petitioners stood to beg for justice. Commander Giwan walked across that floor with steady steps. Her uniform was simple compared to the elaborate garments worn by other species. No decorations, no ornaments, just clean lines and the emblem of Earth on her shoulder. Behind her stood 3 other humans, their faces carefully neutral. They had made this walk before. 18 times before, to be exact. The council chamber fell silent as Giwan reached the center. Above her, arranged in ascending rings, sat the most powerful beings in known space. The Vectari ambassador Deho lounged in his seat, his scaled face twisted in what passed for amusement among his kind. Beside him, the insectoid Heraxian delegate clicked its mandibles in a rhythm that meant contempt. Giwan activated the holographic display. Images filled the air around her. A human colony world burning. The wreckage of transport ships carrying families. Children's bodies floating in the void. The silence in the chamber became heavier. Incident Catalog number 1247, Giwan began. Her voice carried clearly through the vast space. 3 weeks ago, Vectari warships destroyed the civilian transport Hope's Dawn. 372 souls aboard. All dead. Their crime was traveling through space the Vectari Empire now claims as theirs. Space that was neutral territory under council law for 200 years? Deho yawned, showing rows of sharp teeth. The transport ignored warnings. They paid the price for their stupidity. There were no warnings, Giwan replied calmly. The ship's black box recorded every transmission. Would you like the council to hear them? We do not need to hear anything, spoke Counselor Junwoo of the Prixian Confederation. His tone was dismissive. Ambassador Deho's word is sufficient. Giwan had expected this. She continued anyway. For 73 years, humanity has brought grievances to this council. For 73 years, we have documented every attack, every theft, every murder committed against our people. We have followed every procedure. We have waited for justice. She gestured, and the hologram changed. A list of incidents scrolled through the air, each one marked with a date, location, and casualty count. The list went on and on. Minutes passed as it scrolled, and still it continued. How much longer will you waste our time with this? Demanded the Thalaxian representative. Your species is weak. You occupy valuable space, but contribute little to the council. Perhaps if you were stronger, others would not prey upon you. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Some species were more diplomatic in their contempt, but the message was clear. Humanity was considered inferior, and the strong did as they pleased with the weak. Giwan closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, something had changed in her expression. The careful diplomacy was gone, replaced by something colder. We came to you in peace, she said quietly. We believed in the laws you wrote. We thought justice meant something in this council. Justice favors the strong, Deho said with a laugh. That is the way of the universe. Your kind seeks to change nature itself with your pathetic appeals to fairness. Then we understand each other at last, Giwan replied. She reached into her uniform and pulled out a small data crystal. This contains every crime committed against humanity, every name of every victim, every ship destroyed, every colony burned, every child murdered. We are giving you this not because we expect you to care, but because we want the record to be complete. She placed the crystal on the floor and stepped back. We also want it recorded that humanity made every effort to resolve our differences peacefully. We exhausted every diplomatic channel. We begged for your intervention, your wisdom, your justice. And we have given you our answer, Junwoo said. Your petition is denied. This council has more important matters to address. Yes, Giwan agreed. You have given us your answer. 18 times you have told us that our lives do not matter, that our children can be murdered without consequence, that the laws you enforce on smaller species do not apply to the powerful. She turned slowly, looking at each council member in turn. Some met her gaze with amusement. Others looked bored. A few, very few, seemed uncomfortable. We understand now, Juan continued. We were fools to believe that words had power here. That truth meant anything. That justice was more than a word you use to control those weaker than yourselves. Is there a point to this speech? Deho asked. Or are you simply wasting more of our time? Juan smiled, and there was nothing warm in that expression. The point is this. We came seeking peace. You taught us that peace is for fools. We asked for fairness. You showed us that fairness is a lie. We begged for mercy. You demonstrated that mercy is weakness. She straightened her uniform and met Deho's eyes directly. We are slow learners, Ambassador. It took us 73 years to understand the lesson you were teaching. But we have learned it now. We will not forget. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. For the first time, some of the council members looked uncertain. There was something in the human's voice that did not sound like surrender. Are you threatening this council? Demanded the Heroxian delegate. No, Giwan said simply. We are informing you that humanity will no longer participate in this farce. We are withdrawing from all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council and its member species. Our embassies will close. Our representatives will return home. All treaties and agreements are hereby void. You cannot simply leave, Junwoo protested. There are protocols, procedures. We followed your protocols for 73 years, Jiwan interrupted. They led us here to this chamber where our murdered children are dismissed as inconvenient statistics. We are done with your protocols. She turned and walked toward the exit. The other human delegates fell in step behind her. The council members watched in stunned silence. At the doorway, Giwan paused and looked back one last time. You wanted to teach us about strength, about the way the universe really works. Consider your lesson learned. What comes next is on you. The humans left the chamber. The massive doors closed behind them with a deep, resonant boom that seemed to shake the very foundations of the council hall. In the silence that followed, Deho laughed again, but this time the sound was uncertain. Let them go, he said. The universe will not miss such a weak species. But Counselor Kung Ho, who had sat silent throughout the proceedings, spoke quietly to himself. I fear we will miss them very much. We just do not know it yet. The human ships departed council space within hours. Every embassy was emptied. Every diplomatic channel went dark. And across the vastness of space, humanity began to change. The age of talking was over. Something new was beginning, and the galaxy would learn too late. What happens when peaceful beings are pushed beyond the breaking point? 5 years passed like a held breath. The galaxy moved on, barely noticing the absence of humanity. The Galactic Council continued its sessions. Trade routes hummed with activity. Wars were fought and peace treaties signed. The humans, it seemed, had simply faded away into their own corner of space. The Vector Empire expanded eagerly into territories the humans had once claimed. Ambassador Deho personally led the fleet that arrived at the first human colony world. His ships emerged from faster-than-light travel expecting resistance, but found only silence. The colony was empty. Not destroyed, not damaged. Just empty. Buildings stood intact. Power generators still ran. Streetlights illuminated roads where no one walked. In one dwelling, a meal sat on a table, perfectly preserved by the climate controls. But there were no humans. No bodies. No signs of struggle. They ran, Deho declared triumphantly. Like the cowards they are. But his science officer, a younger Vectari named Ilson, examined the site more carefully. Ambassador, this is strange. They left everything behind. Food, equipment, even family items. People fleeing in panic do not do this. And where did they go? There are no records of ships large enough to evacuate the entire population. I do not care where they went, Deho replied. This world is ours now. It's the same pattern repeated across 7 colony worlds. All empty. All intact. All silent. The Vectari moved in, claiming the infrastructure humanity had built. They congratulated themselves on easy conquests. The Raxian collective did the same, taking 3 more worlds without firing a shot. Meanwhile, deep within human space, far from any trade route or council censor, a different story unfolded. Captain Minho stood on the observation deck of Shipyard 7 and watched the construction below. The facility floated in the darkness between stars, hidden by layers of stealth technology that made it invisible to any sensor known to galactic science. Around him, workers moved with quiet purpose, assembling something the galaxy had never seen before, the ships taking shape in the construction. Bays did not look like human vessels. They were sleeker, darker, built with sharp angles that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. These were not exploration ships or cargo haulers. These were weapons, pure and simple. "How many are ready?" Minho asked. Engineer Sora checked her datapad. 78 capital ships fully operational. 342 support craft. Another 200 in final assembly? Good. What about the weapons systems? Testing exceeded expectations, Sora replied. Her voice was flat, emotionless. She had lost her family when the Haraxians destroyed their transport ship. The particle beams can cut through standard council shielding like it does not exist. The kinetic accelerators deliver force equivalent to small nuclear weapons. And the new missiles can track targets through faster-than-light jumps. And A nodded slowly. Our ancestors would be horrified by what we are building. Our ancestors were not murdered by the hundreds while the council watched and did nothing, Sora said coldly. In another facility, buried deep within an asteroid field, strategist Hyunzik worked with his team in a room covered with holographic displays. Every council species military was mapped in precise detail. Supply lines, communication relays, defense platforms, fleet positions, everything. The Vectari keep their main battle fleet here. Hyunsik pointed to a cluster of ships near their homeworld. They are overconfident. Their defenses are positioned to fight external threats, not something appearing from within their own space. His assistant Youngji studied the data. Can we actually get ships inside their defensive perimeter undetected? Show her, Hyunsik said to another technician. The display changed, showing a recording from 3 days earlier. A human stealth ship had jumped into orbit around the Vectari homeworld, remained there for 6 hours taking detailed scans, and jumped away. The Vectari never knew it was there. The council species have grown lazy, Hyunsik explained. They have not fought a real war in generations. Their technology has not improved because they had no reason to improve it. We, on the other hand, have spent 5 years doing nothing but preparing for war. Yonji smiled grimly. When do we start? Soon, Hyunsik replied. Very soon. Across human space, similar preparations continued. Former scientists had become weapons designers. Teachers had become soldiers. Children who once played in parks now trained in combat simulators. An entire civilization had transformed itself with quiet, terrible purpose. In a training facility on Earth itself, Young Mi led a group of new recruits through combat exercises. She had been a schoolteacher before. Now she taught young people how to kill efficiently. Why are we doing this? One recruit asked during a break. The war is already over, is it not? We left. They took our colonies. It is done. Young Mi looked at the young man. Do you know what happened to the children on Colony 7? The recruit shook his head. The Vectari attacked during their festival celebration. 300 children were playing in the Central Park. The Vectari fired on them from orbit. For fun? Because they could. Young Mi's voice remained steady, but her eyes were hard. The council called it regrettable. They asked for both sides to show restraint, as if our children dying was equivalent to the Vectari choosing to murder them. She stood and faced the entire group. We asked for peace, and they gave us contempt. We begged for justice, and they laughed at us. They taught us that mercy is weakness, and that the strong do whatever they want. Well, we learned. Now we will show them what strength really means. The months turned into years. The council occasionally noticed the absence of humans, but gave it little thought. A few species tried to contact human space and received automated messages that all diplomatic channels were closed. Some found this strange, but most simply moved on with their affairs. Only Counselor Kung Ho seemed troubled. He tried repeatedly to establish communication with humanity, sending messages that went unanswered. He studied reports of the abandoned colonies and felt a growing unease. They did not flee in fear, he told his aide. They left because they no longer needed those worlds. But where did they go? What are they doing? His aide shrugged. Perhaps they are hiding. Building new colonies far from council space? Kyung Ho said quietly. You do not take everything with you if you plan to hide. You take everything with you if you plan to return. And you only return stronger. Bai Dai died. The council was too busy with its own concerns. The Vectari were too pleased with their new territories. The Haraxians were expanding their own influence. No one paid attention to the empty space where humanity used to be, in that empty space. In hidden shipyards and secret facilities, humanity prepared. They counted every casualty, documented every crime, named every victim, and built an arsenal that would make the galaxy tremble. The shadow years were ending. What came next would teach the Council the most expensive lesson in galactic history. They would learn that silence does not mean surrender, that absence does not mean defeat, and that the most dangerous enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose and all the time in the world to prepare revenge, the Vectari. Empire celebrated its founding day with traditional excess. Across their home world, cities blazed with light. The capital hosted millions of citizens who gathered to watch military parades and aerial displays. In orbit, the Imperial fleet arranged itself in ceremonial formation. Ships gleaming against the black of space. Ambassador Deho stood on a balcony overlooking the main plaza, watching his people celebrate. 5 years of expansion had been good for the Empire. The human colonies they had taken were producing resources. Trade was profitable. The Council respected Vectari power more than ever. A glorious day, said Admiral Lilson, joining him on the balcony. Indeed, Deho agreed. The Empire has never been stronger, and those pathetic humans are forgotten, hiding somewhere in the dark. At that exact moment, 78 warships appeared in orbit around the Vectari. Homeworld, they did not emerge from faster-than-light travel the normal way, with energy signatures that gave warning. They simply appeared, as if reality itself opened to let them through. One moment the orbital space was clear. The next, it was filled with dark ships that seemed to drink in the light around them. The Vectari orbital defense platforms reacted immediately, but their weapons found no targets. The human ships were there, but somehow not there. Phasing in and out of normal space too, quickly for targeting systems to lock on. Then the humans fired. The defense platforms exploded one by one, each destruction precise and total. The Vectari fleet tried to break formation and engage, but the human ships moved with impossible coordination. They were everywhere at once, striking from angles that should not exist, disappearing before counterattacks could connect on the planet below. Celebrations turned to panic as debris from destroyed platforms began falling into the atmosphere, burning bright trails across the sky. Deho stood frozen on his balcony watching his fleet die. Ship after ship exploded or went dark, crippled by weapons that tore through shielding like it was paper. In his entire life, he had never seen the Vectari military defeated. They were the strongest species in this region of space. They were invincible. They were losing. Admiral Taijin sat in the command chair of the human flagship Reckoning. Around him, holographic displays showed the battle in perfect detail. Every Vectari ship, every platform, every military installation on the planet below. The engagement was proceeding exactly as planned. Enemy fleet is down to 40% strength, reported his tactical officer. Remaining ships are attempting to retreat. Do not let them, Taijin ordered. Any ship that escapes will regroup and return. End them here. The human ships pursued the fleeing Vectari with ruthless efficiency. There was no mercy, no quarter offered. Every enemy vessel was hunted down and destroyed. The void filled with wreckage and the last screams of dying crews. For hours after it began, the battle was over. The Vectari Imperial fleet no longer existed. Every orbital defense was rubbled. The planet below was defenseless, exposed to whatever the humans chose to do next. On the surface, billions of Vectari waited in terror for the bombardment they knew must come. They had seen what their own military did to conquered worlds. Now they would face the same fate, but the bombardment never came. Instead, Admiral Taijin broadcast a message that reached every screen, every communicator, every public display on the planet below. People of Vectari. His voice echoed across the world. For 73 years, your empire committed atrocities against humanity. Your leaders ordered the murder of our civilians. Your military destroyed our ships and colonies. Your council representatives laughed at our pleas for justice. The display changed, showing images that made billions of Vectari turn away in shame. Human children running from Vectari soldiers. Colony worlds burning. Transport ships torn apart, their passengers dying in the void. Crime after crime, all documented, all real. You told us we were weak, Taijin continued. You said strength was all that mattered. You taught us that mercy was for fools. We learned your lesson. Now you will learn ours. Deho, still standing on his balcony, felt ice form in his veins. The human voice continued, calm and cold. We could destroy your world. We could kill every living thing on your planet. You are defenseless before us. Pause, heavy with meaning. But we will not. Do you know why? No answer came from the terrified world below. Because we are not you, Taijin said. We do not murder the helpless. We do not slaughter civilians. We are here for justice, not genocide. Your military is gone. Your ability to harm others is ended. That is sufficient. The message changed to show a list of names, thousands of them. Each one a Vectari officer or official who had ordered or participated in attacks on human colonies. These individuals will surrender themselves for trial within 30 days, Taijin declared. They will face justice for their crimes. If they refuse, we will return. And next time, we will not be so merciful. The human fleet began to withdraw, ships phasing out of existence as mysteriously as they had appeared. Within an hour, Vectari orbital space was empty again. But everything had changed. Across the homeworld, chaos erupted. The military leaders, whose names appeared on the human list, tried to flee. Some succeeded temporarily. Many were caught by their own people, citizens who had just watched footage of crimes committed in their name. The Vectari government collapsed within days, as the population turned on those who had led them to this disaster. The Galactic Council received word of the attack with shock and disbelief. An emergency session was called immediately. Counselors arrived in states of panic, demanding explanations, seeking reassurance. Counselor Junwoo called the session to order with shaking hands. This is unprecedented. The humans have committed an act of war against a council member species. An act of war? Counselor Kung-ho's voice cut through the chamber. For 73 years, the Vectari committed acts of war against humanity. We did nothing. The humans begged us for help. We laughed at them. They showed more mercy in 4 hours than we showed them in 7 decades. That is irrelevant, Junwoo protested. We must respond with force. We must show that such aggression will not be tolerated. Show who? Kung-ho asked. The humans have technology we cannot match. They appeared in the heart of Vectari space without warning. They destroyed the entire Imperial fleet without losing a single ship. What force would you use against them? Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the council station. Another attack was underway. The Raxian Collective was under assault. The pattern was identical. Human ships appearing without warning, devastating strikes on military targets. Civilian populations left untouched, but shown images of every crime their leaders had committed. And then the humans disappeared again, leaving chaos and terror in their wake. In 2 strikes, humanity had crippled 2 of the Council's most powerful military forces, and they had done it with surgical precision that showed they could strike anywhere. Anytime, without warning, the age of Council supremacy was over. The humans had returned, and they brought with them a reckoning that would reshape the galaxy. The Council had taught them that strength was all that mattered. Now the students were teaching the masters what real strength looked like, and this was only the beginning. Panic spread through council space like a disease. Species that had never directly attacked humanity began evacuating their border worlds. The Thalaxian Commonwealth, whose representative had called humans weak, now sent urgent messages, offering apologies and reparations. The humans did not respond. Council sessions devolved into chaos. Representatives shouted at each other, blaming everyone except themselves. Some demanded immediate military action. Others argued for negotiation. A few quietly began preparations to abandon the council entirely. "We must strike back," insisted Councillor Junwoo. "Every day we delay, we look weaker. The lesser species are watching. If we cannot protect ourselves, how can we claim authority over them?" Councillor Kung-ho stood slowly. "Strike back at what? We do not know where the humans are. We do not know how many ships they have. We cannot detect them until they choose to be seen." "You want to fight an enemy we cannot find? Then we track them," Junwoo replied. "We follow them after their next attack. We find their base and destroy it." "You are a fool," Kung-ho said flatly. The chamber fell silent at such direct insult. The humans spent 5 years preparing. "Do you think they did not plan for pursuit? They have outmaneuvered us at every turn. And you want to chase them into whatever trap they have prepared? But fear and pride make dangerous advisors." The council voted to assemble a combined military fleet. 15 species contributed ships, creating an armada larger than any force assembled in living memory. 3,000 warships under unified command. Led by Fleet Commander Hwan of the Prixian forces, Hwan was a careful strategist. But even she felt confidence looking at the fleet under her command. "No force in the galaxy can stand against this," she told her staff. "The humans are clever, but numbers still matter. We will find them and end this threat." Intelligence reports indicated that humans would likely target the Draxian hegemony next. The Draxians had voted against humanity 17 times in council sessions. Their military installations went on high alert. Council forces positioned themselves to intercept any human attack. 3 weeks later, the humans struck. But not at the Draxians. The council fleet itself came under attack while in transit between systems. Human ships appeared in the middle of the formation, already firing before alarms could sound. The engagement was chaos from the first moment. Commander Hwan watched in horror. As her carefully organized fleet disintegrated, the humans were not fighting like any force she had ever encountered. They did not form battle lines or maintain formations. They simply appeared, destroyed targets, and vanished before return fire could connect. "They are inside our command network," her communications officer shouted. "They know our positions before we move. They are reading our orders as we give them." Intelligence officer Jin-soo sat aboard a human stealth ship, watching data flow across his screens. Every communication the council fleet sent, every order given, every tactical decision made, he saw it all in real time. The humans had infiltrated council networks so thoroughly that the enemy was fighting blind while humanity saw everything. "Enemy flagship is attempting to withdraw," Jin-soo reported to his commander. "Broadcasting surrender on all frequencies." The response came quickly. "Inform them that we do not accept surrender." Hwan could not believe what she heard. "You must accept surrender. It is the law of war, recognized by every civilized species." The human response was cold. "We offered surrender 18 times. The council taught us that surrender means nothing. Now you will learn your own lesson." The battle continued for 6 more hours. When it finally ended, the council fleet had lost 63% of its strength. The survivors limped away, broken and demoralized. The greatest military force in recent galactic history had been shattered by an enemy they could not see, could not track, and could not fight. In the aftermath, the council faced a truth it did not want to accept. They could not defeat humanity militarily. Every attempt to fight back had failed. The humans were always one step ahead, always prepared, always devastating in their attacks. Desperate, the council authorized a classified mission. A strike force would locate Earth itself and destroy the human homeworld. If they could not defeat the human military, they would eliminate the source. The mission failed before it began. The strike force commander opened his sealed orders to find detailed intelligence on his team, his ships, his route, and a message from the humans. We know what you were planning. We have known since before you received your orders. Try to find Earth, and we will destroy every council world. Not military targets, everything. You taught us that strength is all that matters. We are strong enough to end your civilizations. Do not test us. The strike force returned without ever leaving council space. The commander resigned in shame. Meanwhile, human forces continued their systematic campaign. Every species that had voted against humanity faced consequences. Not invasion, not occupation, but targeted strikes against their military capabilities and their leadership. War crimes trials began, conducted by humans with perfect documentation of every atrocity. Former military officers, who ordered attacks on civilians, found themselves facing human justice. The trials were public, broadcast across the galaxy. The evidence was overwhelming. The sentences were harsh, but fair. Some were executed, others imprisoned. All were held accountable. The galaxy watched in amazement and terror. Many species had committed crimes they thought forgotten. Now they realized the humans had recorded everything. Every casualty had a name. Every crime had documentation. Humanity's memory was perfect, and their patience for justice was infinite. Species began turning on their own leaders, desperate to avoid human retaliation. Governments collapsed. New leaders emerged, promising cooperation and reform. The entire political structure of council space was transforming. Driven by fear of human retribution, Councillor Kunho, the only council member who had consistently voted in humanity's favor, made an unauthorized transmission to human space. He used old encrypted channels from before the diplomatic breakdown. Please, he begged. I know you can hear this. I know you are listening. There must be a way to stop this. Not for the council's sake, but for all the innocent beings caught in this conflict. What do you want? What will it take for peace? The response came 3 days later, not from some anonymous communication officer, but from Commander Giwan herself. Her face appeared on Kyungho's private screen, and her eyes held no warmth. You ask what we want, Counselor? We wanted justice. We wanted the Council to enforce its own laws. We wanted our children too. Be able to live without fear. We asked for these things for 73 years. The Council's answer was contempt. That was wrong, Kyungho said urgently. I voted for your petitions. I tried to help, Yudijuan acknowledged. You alone showed integrity. But one voice in a chorus of cruelty changes nothing. The Council taught us that words mean nothing without power to enforce them. So we gain power. And now you will destroy the Council? Kill billions in revenge. No, Gyuan replied. We are not monsters, despite what you made us become. We are not destroying civilizations. We are destroying the systems that allowed cruelty to flourish. We are removing those who committed crimes against the helpless. We are teaching the galaxy that actions have consequences. When will it end? Jiwan's smile was thin and cold. When justice is served, when every war criminal faces trial, when every species understands that strength does not give the right to prey on the weak, when the galaxy learns the lesson the Council refused to teach. The transmission ended. Kyungho sat in darkness, understanding at last what the humans had become. Not conquerors seeking power, not destroyers seeking revenge, but teachers administering the harshest lesson the galaxy had ever received. The Council's desperate resistance continued. But with each passing week, it became clearer that they had already lost. The humans were not fighting a war. They were conducting a reckoning, and there would be no peace until the price was paid in full. 2 years after the first strike, the Galactic Council existed only as a shadow of its former glory. The grand chambers where species once gathered to display their power now stood half empty. Representatives sat in seats that once belonged to governments that no longer existed. Speaking for populations that had lost all faith in their leaders, the Vectari Empire had fragmented into 7 smaller states. each desperate to distance itself from the crimes of the old regime. The Herxian collective had dissolved entirely, its former territories now independent worlds trying to build new identities. 12 other species had seen their governments collapse under the weight of human justice, but humanity had not conquered a single world. They had not claimed territory or demanded tribute. They had simply held the galaxy accountable for its own crimes, and the galaxy had shattered under the weight of its guilt. In the ruins of the old council, new galactic assembly was being formed. The structure was different now. No more tiers of power with the strong looking down on the weak. Every species had an equal voice, and humanity held a permanent veto seat. The first session of the new assembly was held on a neutral station, especially constructed for the purpose. Representatives arrived with a mixture of hope and fear. They were starting fresh, building something new. But the shadow of the human reckoning hung over everything. Ambassador Somi represented Earth in the new assembly. She was young, younger than Commander Giwan had been when she made that final speech to the old council, but her eyes held the same hardness, the same memory of what had been done and what humanity had become because of it. As she entered the chamber, conversation died. Every representative watched her, some with respect, many with barely concealed terror. She took her seat calmly, arranging her materials with precise movements. Counselor Kungho, serving as temporary moderator of the assembly, called the session to order. We gather today to establish a new framework for galactic cooperation, one built on principles of equality, justice, and mutual respect. There were murmurs of agreement, but eyes kept drifting to Somi, the Thalaxian representative. A different individual from the one who had called humans weak years ago, stood hesitantly. Before we begin, I must speak. The Commonwealth wishes to formally apologize for our past actions. We participated in a system that enabled cruelty. We stood by while injustice was done. We were wrong. Others followed, each species offering apologies, some genuine, some clearly driven by fear. Somi listened without expression when the apologies finally ended. Kyung-ho looked to her. Ambassador Somi, does humanity accept these apologies? Somi stood slowly. The chamber held its breath. Individuals who committed crimes have faced trial, she said quietly. Those found guilty have been punished according to the severity of their actions. Those who enabled the system, but did not directly participate, have lost their positions of power. Justice, as much as justice can exist, has been served. Relief began to spread through the chamber, but Somi was not finished. However, humanity does not forget. We have documented every crime, every casualty, every moment of suffering inflicted on our people. These records are permanent. They are taught to every human child. We will never forget what was done to us, or who did it, or who allowed it to happen. The relief turned back to fear. That is not a threat, Somi continued. It is a promise. A promise that we will never again trust in words alone. A promise that we will always remember what the galaxy's power structures were willing to do to those they considered weak. A promise that we will never let it happen again, to us or to anyone else. She gestured to the new chamber, to the equal seating, to the structure designed to prevent the old abuses. This assembly can work. It can create real justice and real cooperation. But only if every species here understands that strength does not give the right to prey on the weak, that laws must apply equally to all, that the strong have a duty to protect, not exploit. Former Ambassador Deho, stripped of his rank and serving time in a human detention facility, watched the broadcast from his cell. Beside him sat other former council members, all convicted of war crimes. They watched in silence as the human ambassador spoke. We thought they were weak, Deho said quietly. We laughed at them, called them primitive. They were weak, replied one of the Heraxian prisoners. They could not defend their colonies, could not protect their people. No, Deho corrected. They chose not to respond with violence. There is a difference between cannot and will not. We mistook restraint for weakness. We forced them to show us the difference. On the screen, Somi was still speaking. You asked us to abandon diplomacy. You taught us that might makes right. You demonstrated that the universe respects only strength. We learned your lessons well. But we also learned something you never understood." She paused, making eye contact with representatives around the chamber. "True strength is knowing when not to use your power. The truly strong choose restraint not because they are unable to act, but because they understand the cost of action. Humanity chose diplomacy for 73 years not because we were weak, but because we understood what war means. When you forced us to abandon restraint, when you left us no choice but violence, you did not reveal our weakness. You revealed yours. You revealed that you never understood power at all. You only understood cruelty." The chamber was absolutely silent. "This assembly will succeed or fail based on one simple principle," Somi declared. "Do you learn from what happened, or do you forget? Do you remember the cost of arrogance, or do you repeat the same mistakes?" She sat down. No one spoke for a long moment. Finally, a representative from a smaller species stood. One of the races that had been preyed upon by larger powers for generations. "Ambassador Somi, my people want to thank humanity. For the first time in our history, we sit in a chamber where we are equals, where our voice matters as much as the voices of those who once dominated us." Others joined in, species that had suffered under the old system expressing gratitude. Not all were sincere, Somi knew. Some feared human power and would say anything to avoid becoming targets. But some, at least, seemed to understand the opportunity they had been given. The session continued, establishing rules and procedures for the new assembly. Every proposal was debated. Every voice was heard. It was slow and sometimes frustrating, but it was fair. And fairness, Somi reflected, was something new in galactic politics. Years passed. The new assembly proved more effective than the old council, precisely because no single species or group could dominate it. Disputes were settled through negotiation. Smaller species found protection in laws that were actually enforced. Trade flourished under fair regulations. Humanity maintained its military readiness but did not use it. The fleets that had shattered empires now served as peacekeepers, forcing the assembly's decisions with impartial precision. When violations occurred, human forces responded with exact and appropriate force. No more, no less. Slowly, carefully, trust began to build. New generations grew up knowing the story of humanity's reckoning as history, not as current events. The scars remained, but healing was possible. 100 years after the first strike, a Vectari historian named Taiwan published a comprehensive study of the period. It became required reading across the galaxy. The final chapter concluded with these words: "We thought the humans were weak because they sought peace. We were fools. The truly strong choose restraint not from inability, but from understanding." Humanity understood the cost of war better than any species in the galaxy. Because they studied their own history with brutal honesty. They knew what they were capable of, and they chose not to be that way. When we forced them to abandon restraint, when we pushed them past every limit, we learned what strength actually meant. Not the ability to destroy, though they proved capable of that, but the discipline to stop, to take vengeance only where justice demanded it, to punish the guilty but spare the innocent, to remember every wrong but not let that memory drive them to become the monsters we had been. The lesson cost us everything. Empires fell. Governments collapsed. Thousands died in the trials and battles. But in the end, humanity did not conquer us. They taught us. And the galaxy that emerged from that harsh education is better than what came before. We learned, finally and terribly, that humanity's greatest strength was never their kindness. It was their capacity to choose kindness, even when they had every reason not to. And when they finally chose otherwise, when we forced them to become what they had always refused to be, we discovered that we should have feared their mercy far more than their weapons. Because mercy, we learned too late, is not weakness. It is power under control. And those who possess such power, when they finally release it, can reshape worlds. Somi read the historian's words in her retirement, decades after her service in the assembly had ended. She was old now, watching new generations of humans who had never known war. They lived in a galaxy that, while not perfect, was more just than any that had come before. She thought of Commander Giwan, long dead, who had delivered that final warning to the old council. She thought of all the humans who had died begging for justice that never came. She thought of what humanity had become in those shadow years, and what they had done with the power they had gained, and she hoped, with whatever years remained to her, that the galaxy would never again mistake patience for weakness or kindness for inability, because the next time might not end with mercy. The next time might not end at all.